Some of the best money I've ever spent at the Walmart in Hohenwald, Tennessee. Oh, Pelican, you beautiful deep-throated bird, you. You make a hell of a case. It is a brand new day, beautiful weather out here in the Nantahala National Forest in North Carolina, and it's time to really, I mean really, go over the Pelican 90-liter crate system. This is Pelican's brand new system, stackable system, modular storage system. And I am going to be putting it through its paces, show you everything, at least here off the bat, that I don't like, and of course the things that I like about this case. First off, I'm going to show you exactly what all I have in this. It's shocking how much I have fit into this thing. So let's crack it open. If you know me, folks, I refuse to drink some beverages without an umbrella, and I was all out of umbrellas. Don't judge me. I am going to go ahead, hello, Mr. Ant, and take off the little Pelican crate sticker here because it's bothering me. These are permanent. The ones on either side are permanent. This little guy, I noticed Pelican gives you a little how-to on which end or which corner to peel off. Let's see, yeah, now you can see the dust mark from where we drove in yesterday. So, first things first, you have, count them, 3, 1, 2, if my math is correct without having to take off the shoes. You have 8 latches. We're going to touch on the top here in just a second, but to open it up from one side, unhinge the latches. They have a nice upward pull motion. They don't just actually snap on there. You have to lift them up. They catch the little bar here on the lip, and that's how you would open those. Little safety latches here, keep them from accidentally popping open. One thing that I already necessarily don't care for off the bat is that if you were to have those handles all the way up, again, if you just set it down sort of like I did without folding them down, it's a little difficult to get in there and open these latches because they do have this safety catch. Not a big deal because as you see here, I'm just reaching in, but just know that it's a little finicky unless you really know how to open those latches. Last one. There we go. Hold you down. I'm going to show you something that I love right off the bat before we even open this up. And that is, if you go around to the back, oh, hello little ones. This entire top is removable. While we're here, you can see the pressure release valve here. So if you fly with this, going changing elevations, that's really good to have. And this old top comes right off, and you can see all of my stuff here, all my implements of destruction. You can see the top has these optional moly panels here. I've not been a huge fan of moly system, even from back in the day. I'm a pouch man. That's something that I like on, let's say, my Magellan case. I think even my Rome cases has a pouch system on the underside of the lid. However, with this, you can take these off or not put them on there at all, and it gives you a lot more versatility if you are a moly system person, or if you want a little bit more room top and bottom. Beautiful red seal on there. I don't know why. I really like it as opposed to, let's say, gray or plain black. But the case is airtight. It is watertight, which is absolutely fantastic. But like I said, just the fact that you're able to take the top completely off the system. Rome cases, at least that I'm aware of now, don't do that. My Magellan case does that. And it just makes it very easy in terms if you want to switch the top around for whatever reason, anything like that, or if you want just absolute unfettered access to all your stuff. And oh boy, like I said, let's see what we have in here. We'll empty everything out, and then I'll show you the case itself empty and go over a few more of its features. So what you see here is essentially all of my darkroom supplies, things to develop film and print that film out here in the middle of nowhere, portable darkroom from this camera right here. Trust me folks, you're going to see a lot more of this in a few other episodes on the channel. So we have our gear, that's our printer for our paper, of course our trusty ever-present darkroom apron, have our negative and paper hanger to dry. Another part of the Go processor here. That's what we're going to use to develop and print everything in terms of our chemistry. This is part of another review, don't worry about that. We have our actual printing head, something I call the pork chop. Made that out in New Mexico, I think, to print for a show. Now these are extremely interesting. You may have noticed on the long sides of the crate system, you have these little mono rails. I love these to a point, and I'm going to tell you why. These fit sort of the same T-groove orientation. I have an old Prinzu rack here on the 4Runner, and you have these bars, and you can add accessories to those rails using these little attachments here. They slide down through there. I would have loved to have these just as standalone pieces of kit. These are optional with the crate system because they are great little tie downs for the top of the vehicle. But as Pelican has designed them, you just loosen up the little T-bar. They slide in perfectly as such. In principle, my God, that is brilliant. Again, I really love that. The concept is wonderful. If you had two sets, you could put one on each one of those mono rails, and this thing would be so secure, it would be scary. However, my original plan was to put this box up on top of the 4Runner and use those to anchor it down. However, I wanted to do it long ways, and I didn't want to put it crossways. I could have. They make, I think, the 45 liter, the smaller case. Those, I think, would have been better for what I was going to do with it, because you'll notice there is no monorail on the side here. I wanted to have each one of those cleats on either end mount this vertical so it would be more aerodynamic. I wish Pelican would put a mounting rail or another monorail, somehow integrate that to the ends, the short dimension of the crate system. So these boxes are very new, folks, and that may be something that Pelican is planning, because I noticed, again folks, I'm just spitballing, this is nothing definite. I noticed these little slots here. That may be forward thinking on the part of the company to have some type of mount system the way that I had, let's say, my Rome cases mounted up top. It was a little T, aluminum T, that would go down through the ends of the case, and then you would use, again, those little T-bar connections to literally bolt them to the rack on the vehicle here. Those were extremely solid, almost theft proof. Again, it's a very sort of a nitpick, but I wish they had one rail on the other side so it would give you a little bit more versatility on the mounting. Get our tanks out, get our chemicals out. Paper actually needs to go in the refrigerator. Our film. Actually, our film also needs to go in the refrigerator. Contrast filters for printing. These were for the windows of the Hive. May or may not use them. They're just red film. Very important. I went ahead and threw our stabilizer gimbal in here with it. Almost there, guys. Have our little changing tent, and we have some dark cloths to blot out the light from around the doors of the dark room. So now we have the bare bones 90 liter crate system from Pelican. We're going to talk about the internals because a few of these things are very deceptive, and I mean deceptive in a good way, I promise. But yeah, I'm just looking at it. All this stuff, all that stuff, plus the paper I put in the refrigerator, it all fit in here. And I'm going to pop the dimensions of this from Pelican up on the screen. So as you see now, I have them more or less in what I would call the transport position, essentially the storage position when you want the maximum amount of space, but still keep the dividers in here in case you need them. There are 4 sets of grooves. There's the first one all the way over. There's a little bit of space there. They have these little bottom catches too, that you can secure the bottom of the dividers with. You could fit some type of document or something in there if you wanted to, especially if you're shipping something, to put the documentation in there. So there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, these different sets of little grooves at the bottom. I'll show you there. But the dividers let you compartmentalize, not your emotions, but the case itself. as such, I essentially was going to divide this off, but the way I had things packed, I had a lot of irregular sizes, so I just needed the entire thing to be open. But that is great. I love that. I guess you could say that's just crate. Sorry, folks. But yeah, that is great. You can mix and match these if you wanted a bigger compartment on one of the sides. If you wanted to absolutely maximize the space, you could remove the dividers completely, and that's going to give you the absolute maximum amount of storage space that you can have. If you took those moly panels off of there, you would have a lot of real estate in here. And that brings me to something that I absolutely love about this case, and that is the thought that Pelican has put into maximizing the real estate inside of the 90-liter crate system here. Something I didn't like about my Rome boxes, they were so much bigger, and they, if you literally want to think about it in terms of volume, they were essentially the same size as this. I think this is, of course, this is the 90-liter. I think my Rome cases were 91-liter. They might have even been 90, but these are so much smaller, essentially the same width, but the length is smaller. And Rome put this giant lip on the outside. Of course, I'm sure that facilitated those little bars that I was talking about mounting it on the roof rack here. But I just felt like the Rome boxes wasted a lot of internal space by the way they designed the exterior. That's not the case here with the crate system. Literally, I feel like every inch of usable space has been maximized. Even here underneath, you can see this is where the lock goes in. They've shaved off the material here, so that gives you more space. The space here has been maximized. Again, you have these little bottom clip-in sections. That way you can expand that just a little bit. That holds that firm. If you wanted to have the dividers here in place and you needed just a little bit more space, you can see there I have them in that set of bottom grooves or bottom slots, and then I can just expand them over just a little bit to give a little bit more space, let's say for some soft stuff, for some clothing. I absolutely love that. That is a great piece of engineering. I salute Pelican for it. It's just one of those small things, one of those small bits of design that you know a lot of engineering went into it. Again, that's just something that I absolutely love, so good job, Pelican. So for my purposes, obviously, from a photography standpoint, and not even from a photography standpoint, a non-digital photography standpoint, this is fantastic for storing all of my darkroom supplies, everything that I would need to literally develop and print film out here in the middle of the national forest. However, if I was to store cameras in here, something that is a little less robust in terms of durability, you would definitely want to put some foam inserts in here. You can get foam, guys, literally from anywhere. Cut it out custom. This would be an absolutely incredible camera case to take your more sensitive gear out into the field. You just don't want to throw it in here. You want to put some foam in here, and I'm pretty sure you could even put some foam in the top of the case there itself. This may possibly, don't quote me, this case may turn into a super protective carrier for my ultra large format film camera. That's Eastwood. That's an 11x14 film camera made by Richard Ritter. You can watch the entire saga of picking up that beautiful camera from Vermont here on the channel as well. But I've got a feeling that's where this may head, because especially if we go out on the road, I'm going to put my other boxes up here. I have, essentially, this was my storage for my darkroom. So essentially all the stuff I have in here, I had in my dedicated storage on Bruce, the 4Runner. So yeah, I've got a feeling this case might just be the dedicated home for Eastwood, just because of the sheer protectability, the absolute robust nature of the design. I'm serious, if I just throw some foam in here, that's going to be the ultimate camera case for any type of camera. I'm just a weirdo, and I use those gigantic cameras that make your life miserable. So yeah, I weigh probably these days somewhere in the 240-ish range. None the worse for wear. Seems perfect. Do not recommend that, folks. But so you know, I don't recommend it, but I did it. Did it for you. And just to show you, yes, it very much is waterproof because I need to rinse it off to do the product pictures. Get back into our little bag of tricks here. One thing that I wish this had on here was some piston helpers. Of course, with a removable top, that's very difficult, but be very easy. Loud noise. Very easy to get things out one-handed. Man, the 90-liter crate case from Pelican, can't say enough good things about it. When we get back to the apartment, I'm going to go over the ins and outs of what I have learned about the case, some things that I didn't like, the things that I definitely now do like, and some things that I think you will want to know if you are considering this case in the near future. So if we can beat the rain, that's going to be great. If not, hey, I think it's a win any way you cut it. I even found this really cool rock. Guess that makes it a good trip. All right, folks. See you back at the old manse. The Pelican 90-liter crate case. We have made it back. So let's talk about this. There are just a few things that I want to be sure we talk about. A few things that I have learned in the interim of when we left the Nantahala, and now mainly just a few particular things that I think you might want to know about the Pelican CRATE 90-liter. The first thing being the latches here. I noticed that when they're unlatched all the way, they fold completely flush to the bottom of the case here. The same goes when you have the top off, have the lid off as I do now. You can actually fold these up and latch them again to where they lock into place and they're still flush with the body of the case. Now, no doubt that goes into the stackability of these cases. Remember, these are made to essentially interlock together. So the bottom of one case would lock into the top of the other. So having everything flush like that means that you can stack these cases together, multiple cases together, and not have to worry about any type of snag ups or hangs. And speaking of those locks again, they do have push button locks, but they do not have dedicated locking rivets or locking D-rings. Let's say my Rome cases, you could actually put physical locks on each one of the latches. Now, it's really not a big deal either way. I think more or less it's a personal preference, because you can, of course, lock the box, lock the entire case. There are 4 locking holes there on each corner, so you can lock the case with, well, 4 different locks really. So even though those latches aren't technically lockable with a lock and key, they do latch very securely, and they have that push button opening. All that to say, you really don't have to worry about this case coming open accidentally. Something I mentioned earlier in the review is the lack of assisted opening pistons on this case. Some people like those, some people don't. I know it might take up some room, and of course, like I said, it would negate this lid being totally removable. However, I like having that to help me lift the top of the case if I'm working one-handed, if I'm wanting to leave it open per se in the weather or something like that. There's no essentially halfway in between here. I understand that it could be hard with a piston system if you have these optional moly panels loaded up with something. However, I would just, on a crate this size at least, it would be nice to have some assisted opening. Now, I know you can get aftermarket pistons to put on there. I said, do as you will. That's just a little thing that I would prefer. Again, my Rome cases, which, folks, I'm sorry, those were 95 liter, not 90 liter. They have the assisted opening pistons there. Again, not a deal breaker by any means, but on a case this size, sometimes it's good to have just a little help in keeping that lid open. Now let's talk about the accessories. Pelican included with my review crate here 2 divider panels, 2 moly panels for the lid, and these guys here, these are these little tie down clamps. They work on the T-bar here in the little runners. There's 2 of these runners on either side. The idea is ingenious and they work extremely well. I think I mentioned that I would really have liked to have seen maybe one of these on either end at least for my purposes, mounting them on top of my Prinzu rack, I think it's a CBI rack now, that that would really work better, being able to mount it long ways with the vehicle. And with these, I don't have the option to put those on the end. However, with the 45-liter version of this, the smaller version of this case, those little bars are on the end. These monorails are on the end, so you could mount those long ways on a vehicle. So in concept, love these. They work perfectly. You can actually get little cleat versions of these. These are, like I said, the little loops. If that works better for you. However, just for my purposes, I like having my stuff on top of the vehicle. I would like to have a way to put this on here, maybe a little more versatilely. And these accessories, guys, something to mention, these are not included with this. As far as I understand, to the best of my communication, you will receive just the crate. So you won't have the MOLLE panels, you won't have the dividers, and of course you won't have the tie downs here. So that's something, let's say my Magellan case, it included at least one divider, and again, the little pouches up top, and a little tray system to set on top. You can get the tray optional here. There's quite a few accessories you can get with these cases. Again, that's something that you can maybe be easier to customize your case. You won't have something you don't need. But again, it would just be nice to have some accessories included with this. I completely understand why Pelican would not include some accessories in this. But like I said, hey, some cases come with them, some of them don't. Now, all that being said, the fit and finish on this case, folks, is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, this may be one of the better made travel cases I have ever used. I actually have that old Pelican, I think it's a 1550 case. I carry my Hasselblad in there. Alice, I've carried it in there for years. It came in that case. It's essentially bulletproof. I've had it everywhere out on the road. And that build quality is exceptional. This new 90-liter crate from Pelican is every bit as good as that 1550 case, in my opinion. And naturally, I am a photographer, so I am using this and I am evaluating it from a photography standpoint, from travel photography, for a studio travel standpoint. This crate would be excellent for long-term transport or bulk transport of your photography gear. You saw me out at camp having all my darkroom supplies in here, having all the things that I would need to actually print my pictures like a psychopath. However, don't get this case expecting it to be a ready-made camera case for your cameras and your lenses or any type of really sensitive equipment without adding padding to it first, without adding foam to it first. I mentioned how this might end up being the dedicated case for my ultra large format 11x14 camera. I may throw some padding in here, cut it out, and it would be perfect for that. It would be an incredibly protective camera case with the right padding in there for your equipment. I would literally, well, of course not drop this out of an airplane, but I would have no problem in transporting this case to Guam with all of my camera equipment in there, or doing anything with it that I could imagine doing in any practical scenario, and not worry about the protection of my camera gear in here. Again, with some foam padding. So that brings us to one big question that I know is on your mind. Who is this case for? Now, for me, who likes carrying all their stuff up on top of the vehicle, it lacks a few of the tie downs or a few of the attachments that I would like. Let's say on my Rome cases, I mentioned those little aluminum bars that go down and attach directly to the rack itself. You can still do that with this case. You can still do that with those tie downs, with those cleats. The monorail system would work great for that. It would be more of a temporary mount. You could put any type of let's say ratchet straps on here through those. It would be a solid mount. Again, it's just not something that I'm used to carrying, so I would prefer something that had a little bit more permanent mountability. But like I said, if you're storing things in a garage, if you need more space, if you're shipping something, if you're carrying something, let's say, again, all your studio setup or anything like that, if you want to carry your cameras in here, add the padding, it would be great. It's just an all-around workhorse case, the Pelican CRATE 90-liter. And like I said, they come with a 45, a half the size of this. You can stack them. They're modular. There's all sorts of accessories for it. I may be getting me one of those little clip-on lights from Pelican. I think that would be a great accessory for this case. It's IP67 waterproof. It's dust proof. It is incredibly well made. There's lots of handling points on here. The actual hand grips feel extremely sturdy. You saw me standing on the thing. It's been beat around out there in the Nantahala. It was in the storms. It's dirty, as you saw now, as every good case should be. I would have immense faith in the protectability of this case for any of the gear I have. So that being said, I absolutely can recommend the crate system. It's coming to the consumer market here probably by the time you're seeing this video. So check that out. I have all the links down there for it to find the information on this case and any other Pelican products that you want to check out. There will be an entire full text review over at F-Stoppers. There will be a link to that full text review down in the description, of course, as well. Check out everything else down there, folks. It really helps to keep the channel running because I am the channel. I hope you enjoyed this, everybody. If you have any questions that I can answer, feel free to put those down there in the basement of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot to Pelican for letting me take your Crate 90 liter for a test run. And as always, I can't end these videos.